All right, so in this session, again, we're going to be talking a little bit about automation within the CRM. Let me talk a little bit about what exactly we're going to be discussing. So what we're first going to talk about is building out workflow rules inside the system, and then we'll talk specifically about a set list of some of the automation features, namely auto-assignment rules, approval processes, and also macros. So the three that I just referred to, auto-assignment, approvals, and macros, they are very, very related and very similar to some of the functionality that we're going to be talking about in workflows. So we'll have like a deep dive into how workflows are set up, and then we'll sort of show how that applies in some of the other ones as well. And we'll take about half the time to cover that, and about half the time to talk about Blueprint as well, specifically, because that's one of our most important features inside the system when it comes to automation as well. So we'll definitely spend some time on that. There are those workbooks as well. One is set up specifically for workflows, and the other one is for Blueprint. So definitely use that to follow along. And we'll kind of go through a demo of some of those as well. So let's first talk about the workflow features and automation within the CRM. So the first question that we need to ask ourselves and talk a little bit about is, technically speaking, what is automation supposed to be? So essentially, it boils down to these four words: if this, then that, right? If it's raining outside, then I need an umbrella. If I order a burger, then I want fries and a shake with that. That type of thing. So if something happens inside a certain scenario, if there's some type of criteria set up, then I want something to happen. I need to do something, right? That's essentially what it boils down to. And when we talk about how automation sort of works inside the CRM, we basically want to set up a criteria of what happens inside Zoho. So if a deal closes, meaning we got that sale, we want to send an email that says, hey, thank you so much for your business. Here's some more information about your transaction, maybe. So we can send a thank you email. Or maybe we want to get a little bit more specific. So what we could do is say, if a deal closes, then we want to send a thank you email. We want to inform the finance team about this transaction so that they can invoice the customer. We also need to maybe send a notification to the sales manager that says, hey, your sales rep closed the sale. And then maybe we want to assign a task to the account rep to follow up with them in a couple of days. So there's a lot of different things that we would need to do after a sale is closed. But maybe it's not for every single deal. Maybe we need to get a little bit more granular, right? Maybe we say that every deal that closes in California that's above a certain dollar amount, maybe you want to trigger a specific email to the California manager or a specific account exec on that team. So we need to get as granular on the if side as much as we do on the then side as well, right? And that's what workflows are pretty much all about. And how it applies inside the workflow builder is a workflow rule is the if part, and the different actions that you see in the red are the then that part. So every alert, task, and other things that we're going to be talking about are what's sort of given to you out of the box with the workflow builder. And so to kind of talk about what the basic premise of it is that we have these basic actions set up inside the system that allow you to trigger certain things to happen automatically. So a new lead gets generated, or maybe we update the status to contacted. Then we need to send an email that says, hey, thanks for talking to me. So we can send an email either to your users or that lead or that contact through the CRM workflow. Then after that lead has been contacted, we need to create a task that reminds that sales rep to talk to them again in a couple of days. So creating that follow-up procedure for them to be able to close out their tasks later on and complete the actions that they need to do. So automatically triggering that task. Maybe we also need to update a field inside the lead that says that we made that first call. So the stage of that has been set to the next level. Those are some of the basic actions that are already set up for you guys to configure inside the system pretty easily. Now there's a few more advanced actions that are available as well. And that pretty much gives you the ability of setting up what we call webhooks. And those allow you to either send data from Zoho to another app or grab data from another app and put it into Zoho using HTTP requests. And so maybe, for example, when you close the sale, you need to send a notification or some type of information to your accounting app. Or if you need to grab information from another place whenever a new lead is generated, you trigger a webhook for that to happen. On top of that, you also have what we call as custom functions. That invokes our deluge scripting language, which is pretty much available across multiple Zoho applications, including CRM and what's used to power Zoho Creator or Custom Application Builder. And essentially, you can trigger other actions to happen outside of what's already pre-built for you. So aside from sending emails, aside from creating tasks or updating other fields, maybe we want to grab some information from the deal side and put it into the account, or maybe change some things around in a custom module. The opportunities are endless with a custom function. So you can basically trigger anything else to happen with a deluge script. Now, on top of triggering these actions immediately, so as soon as I create that lead, then send that email or that webhook, we can also set up timed-based actions, which means that we can delay those actions or schedule them to happen at a certain time frame. So let's just say when a new lead is created and we contact them, then we send an email immediately, and then we send an email 2 days later. So we can trigger those to happen on a scheduled basis instead of immediately as well. So there's a couple of different things that we're going to be able to do. And some useful business examples here that kind of come into play is that, let's just say that we need to pass, again, the information for a deal over to the accounting department or maybe your accounting application to be able to invoice the client. Maybe you need to send a reminder to an account exec when the contract of a sale is about to expire. So not only can we trigger things based on something that happens like a deal closes, we can also trigger it based on a date. So an expiration date, a birthday, or some other date inside the system. Or if we lose a sale, for an example, we can notify the salesperson or the sales manager for that region immediately. And then trigger other notifications to happen inside the system. So with that in mind, I'm going to go ahead and jump into a quick demo on my side here. So I'm going to go back over into my CRM. All right, and we're going to go back over into the wrench icon at the top right. And then under this setup menu, we're going to go over to automation and click on workflow rules over here. So what I'm going to do is create a new workflow for when new leads come in. So just anytime a new lead comes in, I'm going to create some type of email that gets sent out. So what I'm going to do is create a rule, and I'm going to select leads. So I'll just say new lead workflow. All right. So the first thing that you're going to be able to set up is how you want this rule to be executed. So setting up the criteria, the if part, right? So a couple of options that you have is you can trigger this rule based on a specific change that's made. So when a record is created, when it's changed, when it's deleted, or when a specific field is updated, and every time that field has been updated, like the stage, for example. So you have that as an option. We also can trigger it based on a date or time value, which means that we want to send an email to that person when it's their birthday. So we can choose one of those date fields, for example. If I had date of birth as one of my options, I could trigger an email based on that and do it every year, okay? Or maybe a contract expiry date. You could use that as a way to trigger something to happen. One very, very new feature is that you can also base it off of scoring values. So in a second, we're going to talk about scoring rules inside the system and how you can add points and subtract points from a specific person based on interactions. And so based on when those scores are increased or decreased or just updated in general, we can also trigger things to happen. So let's go ahead and choose this option here. So I'm going to say whenever a new lead is created, okay? So now, on top of when a new lead is created, I can also say which types of new leads that I want to have this rule triggered for. So I could just say, I could simply put every single lead, right, and choose all records. Or if I wanted to drill down a little bit more and say if a lead is created and the state is Texas, for example, then I want to have a specific, condition set for that type of notification, right? So I can set up that condition, and then I can create these different actions to happen, right? Now we have instant and scheduled. So over in this instant section, I have a notify option. So I can notify via email. We also have integrations with Slack, with Zoho Click, of course, and also the Ring Central version called, I believe it's called Glip. And so you can trigger notifications in that application, or you can trigger an email. So if I click this little email button, I can create a new email notification. I'll just say new lead alert. And then I can choose which email that I want to have sent out, or which email address. So I could choose maybe the lead owner. So I want to say, hey, you have a new lead in your system or in your pipeline. Let's go ahead and send an email. Or maybe instead of submitting a notification via email to the lead owner, I want to send an email to the actual lead. So I could say, you can call this new lead email. And then from there, I can go ahead and choose a template, right? So you can select an existing template that you already have. I already have one called new lead email, but you can also create one. And so if I hit this little create button, it'll pop up the section for me to draft up a new email template. You can use any of the existing basic templates that we have or use some of the pre-designed ones. Just a little tidbit here. The basic and also these design ones will show sort of like a marketing email. You'll see some white space in that. So if you're not looking for that, if you just want a simple looking email to get sent out, best case scenario, you go ahead and hit this little insert HTML plain text option, and that'll just take you to the basic email template builder. So you don't have that white space. It doesn't look like a marketing email or anything. And so from here, you could start typing up what the email is going to be. So I could just say hi, and then even put in their information. So I could put in the first name and add in some other details. Thanks for talking to us or whatever. And so I can set up that, that type of email to be sent out to them. And then I can go ahead and choose that email to be chosen inside the system as well, once I save that template. So I'll go ahead and choose that new lead email and hit save and associate. So my email trigger has been set up. Now, aside from that, maybe I want to also create a task for one of my sales reps to follow up with them the next day after the lead has been created. So I can create a new task. I can either create a new one or I can see some of the other ones that I've made already. But from here, I can go ahead and put in a subject for what that task is going to be, set a due date. So 1 day after that rule has been triggered or the lead has been created, I could set what the default status of it is going to be and what the priority is as well. It's going to say that it's going to be the task is going to be assigned to the person who is the lead owner, or you can choose a designated person in your CRM to get that as well. And then you can also set up notifications, reminders, so that when they walk in the door the next day, they get another pop-up or an email notification. So there's a lot that you could do with these tasks that are created as well and how it shows up for them. So I'm going to go ahead and just choose this first follow-up call one that I already created. And then I can also maybe update another field. So maybe you want to update the status of the lead to say email sent, right? So then I can choose that option that says email sent, and that new lead email that got sent out to them is going to be updated. So I'll just call this email sent status update. Okay. All right. So those are the instant actions that happen. So if a lead is created and the state is in Texas, then this new lead email is going to get sent out immediately. A task is going to be created immediately, and that status is going to be updated immediately. I can also schedule those actions to happen later. So let's just say I want to delay the email being sent out a couple of hours from now instead. So I can set up the amount of hours or maybe send out another follow-up email 2 days later. So then I can trigger another series of things to get set up inside the system as well. So you'll be able to set up both those instant and scheduled actions. Now to add to this a little bit, I said if this lead is created and the state is in Texas, probably about 6 months ago, if I wanted to set up something else that says if the lead is in Florida or California, I'd be stuck here. I'd need to create or clone this workflow and create a new one for that specific function. relatively new feature is that we can also set up multiple conditions within the same workflow now, which means that you don't have to create the same workflow over and over and over and over again. You can just hit add other condition, and then I could say if the state is in California now, I can set up another series of things to get sent out. So you'll have that as an option to set up another series of things to happen within a single workflow now. So makes things a heck of a lot easier. You can set up multiple conditions within one and not have to recreate the whole thing over and over and over again. So you'll have that as an option too. That's pretty much what you can do to set up a workflow rule and how it's going to be set up inside the system. I have a couple that I've already set up already. So what I'm going to do is just show you what that sort of looks like. So in this other example, I have a closed won workflow. And what this does is whenever the stage of a deal is hit closed won, then all these other things happen. So a Slack notification gets sent out, a task is created, and a field update. So let's just go over to one of my deals. I'm going to go ahead and go to just one of these and hit closed won right over here and hit save. Now if I go ahead and refresh this real quick, you can see that that activity has been created right here, and it's assigned to me. And then if I go over to my contact for this, then you can see that the contact status has been updated to purchasing customer, right? So as soon as the deal has been closed, now I can update something in my contact that says this is now a purchasing customer. So if I need to go back into my reports or just look at a list of my data, I can use that contact status field now to just see all of my purchasing customer contacts, essentially, using that option. So with that type of automation, we can update these fields, use it for later when we're looking at this data, and set it up the way that we need. Okay, perfect. So that's a little bit about the workflow option. Now, to run through some of the other automation pieces that we have inside the system, then we also have the ability of automatically assigning new leads or contacts whenever something happens inside the system. So whenever new leads are generated or contacts, we can have those automatically assigned to a specific person based on a specific criteria. So important factor here is that if you have sales teams that work in specific regions, for example, if they're located in a specific city, state, or country, then you can allocate those leads or contacts directly to a specific agent based on a particular criteria. If they come from your website, if you upload this information from a spreadsheet, you can use one of those assignment rules to be able to trigger that. And then also, not only can you dedicate a specific person to get that lead, you can also trigger what we call as a round robin function. What that means is if you have 6 people that work on the California side, but only one person that works in Texas, then how are you going to distribute those California leads? You can use what we call as a round robin function to be able to evenly distribute every single lead that comes in from California to those 6 people, right? And just to quickly show you what that looks like, going back over to my little wrench icon here, and hit automation, and under that, I'm going to hit assignment rules. So I'll just show you one that I've created already. So leads by state. So every single lead that gets generated that's in California, Oregon, Washington, or Nevada gets assigned to Donnie. Every lead that's generated from New York, Florida, Georgia, or Vermont goes to Lori. Now, if I also needed to distribute these leads to other people, I can go into this one, and then instead of automatically assigning it just to Donnie, I can choose assign to multiple users in a round robin and choose a couple of people. So maybe it needs to be distributed to me and Donnie at the same time. So the first lead that's from California will go to Donnie. If the second one is from Nevada, then it'll go to me. If the third one is from Oregon or California again, then it'll go back to Donnie. So it'll basically cycle through the list of people that are in this assignment rule. So giving myself the ability to not have all the leads in my name, I can distribute them to my salespeople, and so I don't have to worry too much about figuring out how many leads that I have and then manually reassigning them later. I can just have the system take care of that for me and not have to do it all on my own. Okay. Next thing here is approvals. Now, approvals are going to be very, very important for a sales process that requires a little bit more of a manual check or balance. Let's just say that whenever a deal comes into the pipeline and for some reason the sales rep put an outrageous number. Let's just say that you guys usually do a deal that's an average of like, I don't know, $5,000 or $10,000, but someone just accidentally or just randomly put in $1 million, right? Because that's happening and it looks kind of funky, you'd want to be able to have some type of check that says, hey, why is this happening? Let's take a look at what's going on here. So you can create an approval process that says if the deal is above $25,000 or $100,000, then we need to have a manager take a look at that, approve it, reject it, or say something else, and then continue the process after that. So that actually can be utilized so that as a manager or someone higher up, you have the visibility and the control to say whether this is something that I would want to have in my system or something that I don't want to have. And so just like you can initiate actions automatically within a workflow, like creating tasks, sending emails, you can pretty much do the same thing from an approval. So once I hit the approve button, I can send an email. Once I hit the reject button, I can create a task that says, hey, sales rep, fix this, right? So just to show you what that looks like, back over into my setup menu here, and then under automation, we go to approvals. So I created one already called discount. So basically, whenever the discount percentage of a deal is not empty, which means anyone put in a percentage discount, it needs to have my approval. I need to go in and say, okay, this is cool, or no, it's not, right? So the approval comes to me. I can set up, just like we can set up any criteria within a workflow, we could set up a very similar criteria here. We could choose any field. We can say, instead of maybe if it's not empty, we could say if the discount is greater than 10%, then it requires my, my approval. We could set up other conditions as well. So you can get pretty granular on these approval processes. And instead of it being me, maybe I want to choose a role. So let's just say I have a bunch of other sales managers or directors. I want it to go to the manager first before it comes to me, right? Or the CEO has to be the one to approve it. So if it goes to the manager, or maybe it goes to the manager and then it goes to me, then you can also say whether it needs to be everyone that needs to approve it in sequential order, or it can happen at the same time. So you can set up a lot of different control. If you wanted to set up different layers of approval, or just have one person approve everything, you'll have that ability as well. I can automatically assign a task to myself or to that other approver that says, hey, you need to go ahead and approve this or reject this or take a look at it. So another task can be created. And then after that record or that deal has been approved, then I can trigger other actions to happen. So update a field, assign a task, maybe send an email. And I can also initiate actions when a record is rejected. So I'll have that as an option as well, and I can allocate what exactly happens inside the system. So how it's going to look like within the system is whenever an approval is hit, I'm just going to go ahead and turn this one on. And what's going to happen is I'll go ahead and create a deal here and put in a percentage discount. So I'll put in 15%, put in a couple of options here. Yeah. All right, so let's just say that one of my reps tried to create a new deal. This is what it's going to look like, right? I put in a percentage discount, and now it locks that record, which means that no other change can be made to that deal at all. They can't go back and be like, oh crap, I shouldn't have done that. Let me just go ahead and try to change it. They can't do that. So they're pretty much, that requires a manager to go in and hit this little respond button and say whether it's been approved or rejected. Or they can delegate that approval to someone else. And if there's a bunch of approvals that you need to make all at the same time, instead of having to go into an individual deal, you'll have this little My Job section. And so that new deal will show up and it'll allow me to take a look at it and see whether I need to approve it or reject it or do all that. So I can manage all the different approvals within one page. So you'll have that option as well. And the last thing here is macros. All right. So within workflows, we talked about how we can send emails, create tasks, update fields based on something happening inside the system, right? So it requires some criteria to be made for me to initiate that action. Instead of that, maybe I need to do all these different actions at a particular time frame. So basically a macro is essentially an easy button. You can program that template to be sent out, that task to be created, and that update of a field all at the same time without having a workflow trigger that, so that you could do a bunch of things at the same time and not have to worry about it later or wait for a workflow to hit it, right? So I can go back over to my CRM, and let's just say that I think I have a couple of macros set up for contacts here, or leads. So this is kind of what it looks like. So I can create a macro or choose an existing macro that I have. I'll just go through the creation page. And so maybe I want to have that new lead notification sent out and tasks to be created on a button click. So I can basically choose a template, go through the same process again, and update a field, create a task. But instead of me having to wait for a workflow to do it, I can just basically create a macro so that once I create this one here, then I can just go ahead and select the leads that I want this to apply to, hit run macro, and I can go ahead and initiate that email to be sent out, that call to be, or that task to be made, and that status to be updated, for example. So it's just another quick and easy way to kind of cut through what a workflow would need to do, and you could just do it by setting up a macro. Each sales rep will have the ability to create their own macros as well. So if they do it in a particular way that's not so much the same as how another sales rep would like to do it, each and every person can set up their own macros too. So if there is a usual email template that they send out, that they like to send out, or they work in a specific way, each and every macro can be set up personally. So they can have a little bit more control on how they work as well. Okay, cool. So that's pretty much everything for the automation side and setting up workflows. So the next thing that we're going to be talking about here is Blueprint. Okay, so Blueprint, in short, is our process automation feature. So we talked about automation in general through workflows and all this. When we talk about a whole process from start to finish, like lead qualification or deal stages, those are things that go from a step-by-step process, right? And so Blueprint is pretty much designed for that format. We have these ways of qualifying leads through a lead status update. We assign something, we follow up, we gauge interest, and then we identify what the buying signal is, and then we move it over to a deal and convert that. And then that has its own sales process from start to finish. We negotiate, we send proposals. There's a whole step-by-step put in place. There's all these different things that we kind of set up already using workflows where we can assign those leads to specific people. We can trigger those emails and everything and create those approvals. But let's just kind of talk about what a typical sales process would look like. When a new lead is generated, there's 3 possible things that could happen. If I try to call a lead, I can either leave a voicemail, which means that they didn't actually pick up the phone. I got them to be contacted, so I actually got the phone number for them. And let's go back to my automobile dealership example. Let's just say I reached out to that new lead, and they're actually really interested, and they want to have a test drive, right? So there's 3 possible things that can happen from when a new lead is generated to when I reach out to them. These 3 different things can happen. Or it can go in a couple of other directions where I leave a voicemail and then I call them back and I get them on the phone again. Or if they go from getting them on the phone, say, hey, maybe I'm thinking about it, call me in a couple of weeks, then it can go from contacted to test drive, right? So it can go in a couple of different directions. But essentially, after we hit that test drive option, that's where we know that this person is qualified. We know that this person is ready to move forward. And then at any point in time, whether they're in a test drive, they left a voicemail, they can possibly be not interested anymore, and they're no longer a qualified lead at that point. So the current situation and the way that we're talking about these different workflows is that these possible directions that can be made within that process aren't really controlled too well when we talk about setting up the lead status or setting up the deal stages. One of my reps can just go in and say, okay, yeah, I closed this deal when they actually didn't do it, right? They just jumped ahead and said they closed it, right? There's no real control to say that they went through the necessary steps. They, as a new sales rep, someone who just got hired onto the company, they might not know how your sales process even works. So what are they supposed to be doing? What is the next step, right? There's a little bit of an education problem. There's a little bit of a control problem as well. And from a higher up standpoint, you're kind of at a loss to see, are these movements actually being made? Is my sales process actually working? What am I missing out on? So that's where it's really important to say that as your company grows and scales and your sales process changes, your CRM should actually adapt to that as well and be able to log those changes and make them more specific to how it works for you. So that's where Blueprint actually comes into play. So when we think about it, we need to have that process set up from start to finish. So when a new lead is generated, we need to go through that qualification process in order, right? We can have opportunities where it jumps ahead, but we need to have that control and insight on how and why that happens. So with Blueprint, you'll have the ability of dragging and dropping your different statuses in a specific format so you know that it's going through this journey, right? You can visualize that, and you can essentially initiate those different actions to happen of movements between one stage and another one inside this section, okay? So in this arbitrary example here, we schedule an appointment and it gets qualified, and then we go through a negotiation standpoint. So a discount can be made or rejected at that point. So we can drag and drop what the actual movement of that would actually be. And from a management perspective, it allows you guys to have the comfort of knowing that each and every deal is going through that same process. You know that each lead is being qualified the same way. You know that people aren't jumping ahead. So you'll have that option as well. And then when they're going through that process, this is pretty much what it would look like. You will, instead of being able to change the stage and jump ahead, they'll only be able to see those different buttons called transitions that allow them to be able to click on that button and choose something. What can also happen is a pop-up page can be set up so that whenever they hit the negotiate button, then it pulls up this page that says what the discount percentage is and what the closing date is as well. And then you can set up controls on that too and provide some type of validation that says, hey, you can't discount this much, or hey, the closing date needs to be pretty soon. And so essentially, from a training perspective, your sales reps can now learn what the sales process is much, much faster because you don't have them lost in the CRM and know what they're supposed to be doing. They only have these 2 or 3 options that they can go through instead of all these endless options that they have. So it provides a lot more control on for you guys to be able to deploy that, and so they have an understanding of what they're supposed to be doing as well. And of course, you can kind of measure the growth and success of how those processes are doing as well. So you can see how much time each and every record is in a blueprint. You can see how many records are entering or leaving a blueprint. And so there's a lot of different things that you can essentially track in growth measurements along the way. And on top of that, you can also trigger the same workflows and actions that we were talking about before as well. So as a deal moves from stage 1 to stage 2, we can trigger that email, that task, that custom function or webhook, pretty much the same way that we did in a workflow, right? So you'll have that ability inside the system. So if we go through back to that same example here where we have a new lead and it goes through this process, let me just go through a quick demo here. So I'm going to go back over to my wrench icon again, my handy dandy wrench icon, and then go over into automation in Blueprint. Okay, so I'm going to show you a couple of different ones first. That same process that we were looking at, where we can either Whenever a new lead is created, we can either leave a voicemail, it can be contacted, or they want to have a test drive. And I can also see whether it goes from left voicemail to first contact and then test drive eventually afterwards, right? So I basically was able to drag a movement from here over here, and so that indicates to me that I need to have a transition from when it's a new lead to when I leave a voicemail. And so this is where I created that transition, right? And so I'll say that this button is left voicemail, and I can also trigger what's going to happen afterwards. So in this during section, I can say whether they need to leave a note that says, hey, I left a voicemail. You can even send a message to them that says, hey, this is so-and-so from Dream Cars Pleasanton. I just wanted to give you a call. So you can have even a voicemail script set up for them to be able to know what they're supposed to say on the phone. And also make sure that they fill in some information. So if I actually reach out to them and they want to have a test drive, then I could say that they need to put in a decision date and they have to have a budget allocated. And you can also set up control that says if the budget is not above $10,000, then you can say, are you serious? We're only working with people that actually have money. So you can actually create some control on those as well. And then lastly, of course, is that you can trigger those other things to happen afterwards, like sending an email, creating a task, or doing some other actions as well later on. So let's kind of see that in action, shall we? So I'm going to create one real quick. Okay. Let's call him Willie Nelson. Why not? Right. Okay. All right, cool. So I have all that set up here, and I'm going to hit save. I'm going to show you this one that I have set up as well. So this person is currently in a blueprint. So I'll have these 3 different options here for a transition. So I could see whether this person is interested, not interested, or I want to call them back later. If I go ahead and hit interested here, it's going to pop up a page for me to fill out some of that information. So I could say what type of insurance that they're interested in. So I'll be able to fill out some of this information here and some other products as well. So I'm able to pull up this page of what exactly I can have them fill out. So that'll give me that ability to control what's being shown from start to finish. And then after that transition is made from that first step over to the next one, then I'd be able to, trigger that action to happen later. So I'll have that control. I'll be able to upload things and have things set up, and then also trigger those things to happen afterwards using the workflow section as well. So that's kind of how it works and how you can set up those things. We've kind of shown that there's reasons to use workflows when certain things happen inside the system, and blueprints might be actually pretty necessary as well at the same time. But you still need both, right? Basically, the reason why you would want to use a blueprint and not workflows is that it forces the record to go into a specific category. The other thing that it allows you to do is guide your sales reps into the right process, and then also assign things to happen in different steps as well as the journey goes through. But you still need both. Workflows are still going to be very, 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 very important. So that's kind of how we, while workflows pretty much allow you to set up all conditions, Blueprint is strictly for a step-by-step process, right? So lead status, deal stage. Workflows can trigger based on anything else as well. So if there's other things that need to be set up as conditions, then you need to set that up as a workflow rule instead of a blueprint process. Okay? Thank you so much for listening. Appreciate it.